Okay, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to the Washington Policy Pulse. Again, my name is Nathan Dean. My colleague Matt Shettenhelm will be joining us in a bit. Um, Lots of stuff happening this week in Washington. Obviously, feel free to put questions into the chat if you'd like to have us discuss anything. But the first thing I want to talk about is tariffs. Look, we're getting into this stage where what we're calling is the shock and awe of tariffs. President Trump comes out with a threat/opportunity for this tariff, says it's on, then a couple days later it seems to be off, then it's back on, then a couple of days later it's off. The next major deadline is April 2nd, obviously, when reciprocal tariffs are coming through. What we're telling our clients, and I think you've heard me say this before, is prepare for it, but also prepare for the idea that a day or two later there's an exemption, or a day or two later something gets walked back, but you have to prepare for it. Now, in order to help you do that, Bloomberg Intelligence last week released a deep dive report on tariffs. This is an 80-page report that ranges from automobiles to retail to healthcare to FX. This is one of the biggest reports I think that BI has ever produced, at least in terms of analysts, if not bits. What we call our little pieces of information, we call them bits. So I have put it in the link in the chat if you'd like to download that report. Otherwise, if you are a terminal subscriber and you watch this afterwards, please send me an email. I'll get you the on-terminal link for that as well. Or if you're watching this later and you need the off-terminal link as well, please just let me know and we'll get that to you. So next thing up is the government shutdown, which is scheduled to take place. For those of you, it's the chat on Zoom. So if the client who just pinged that, if you look up, you should be able to see the link above that function. And if not, just ping me afterwards and I'll get that to you as well. So let's talk about the government shutdown. So if Congress does not pass a continuing resolution, at this point, a full year omnibus is not going to happen. If Congress does not pass a continuing resolution by Friday night at midnight, the US government is going to shut down. Now, I don't think a shutdown is going to happen. I don't think many people around Washington think a shutdown is going to happen, but the situation is this. Over the weekend, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson released a 99-page bill kicking the can, or at least funding the US government through September 30th of this year. Now, there's all been this talk of whether or not we'll get a clean CR or we'll get a CR that includes things like codifying DOGE and additional policy writers. I would toy this bill as a clean-ish bill. It's not clean. There's additional policy writers in here that Democrats aren't going to like, but it's clean-ish. Some of the things are additional monies for immigration and border security, some additional language in terms of the defense spending and so forth. But Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, plans to have a vote tomorrow night. This would be Tuesday night. And then if he is successful, then this would go to the Senate, and then the Senate would have to pass on it. Now, unlike the reconciliation bills that we've talked about in the past, this has to go through the filibusters. So in order for this to pass, you need 7, most likely 8, because Senator Rand Paul generally doesn't agree with these things. You would most likely need 8 Democrats to go along with you in order to keep the government open past Friday. Now, this can play out in a couple of ways. The way I think it's going to play out is that I'm not exactly sure the Republicans are going to be able to get everybody on board. For example, Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, he's a very conservative Republican. He generally doesn't support stopgap bills no matter what they are. And with Speaker Johnson only able to lose 1 vote, that's it. So, we'll see if Speaker Johnson can actually get this through. A lot of people have asked, well, why can he get this through or why could he get the House Republican resolution bill through last week versus this one? Well, last week wasn't exactly a bill. Last week was actually just blueprints. There weren't specifics in it. This one has specifics. So if Speaker Johnson can't get the House bill through tomorrow night, look for the Senate to then just pass like a 1-month stopgap resolution, and we kick the can and we have this conversation in April. Now, if Speaker Johnson can get this bill through, it then goes to the Senate, and the Senate's going to have a very difficult question. These are the Senate Democrats. Are they going to support this bill, which I coined as clean-ish, or are they going to force a government shutdown? Now, I don't think either party wants a government shutdown at this point. I don't think the Republicans want a shutdown because, remember, in a shutdown, you can't do anything else. You have to continue to work until the government is open. You can't have hearings on other things or other matters. the government is effectively shut down, and that slows President Trump's agenda. Now, Democrats, I don't think want to shut down either, because Democrats have always viewed as shutdowns as bad politics. Now, I don't think any party is going to really take a political hit from the shutdown if it occurs. Look, the election is still a long ways away, but I just don't see either party really taking the position right now that this would be politically advantageous for them to shut it down. So obviously things can change. President Trump could just refuse to sign the bill and shut the government down. That may happen, but right now I just don't think it's going to take place. And if remember, if I think I've said this before, if the government shutdown does occur, very few market impacts. In fact, we don't see many at all. There's some angst as it leads into the debt ceiling issues that will come up a little bit later. Obviously, certain reports aren't going to be filed, but very little impact to the government shutdown. So last week, President Trump gave his joint address to Congress, and there was one thing in there that surprised me, and this was the CHIPS Act language, and this is what I've asked Matt to come on and talk about. Now, he said in here the CHIPS Act, and I'll let Matt explain what the CHIPS Act is. He essentially turned around to Speaker Johnson, called it a horrible, horrible thing, and looked for Speaker Johnson to, essentially repeal it. And at the time I saw this, and I was kind of like, was this off the cuff? Like, was this prepared remarks, or was this off the cuff? Because there was almost like a lukewarm reaction. So, Matt, can you just give us what's the latest on the CHIPS Act?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, this is legislation we followed in 2022 when it ended up passing. And what the law does is it gives $39 billion to US companies to build chip factories, fabs in the United States. So we're talking about significant funding that was finalized in terms of actual contracts by the Biden administration at the end of last year. So, $6 billion. So a lot of money out there. And then to hear the president come out and say this is a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, and then turn around and say, let's get rid of it, was sort of surprising. We've heard comments like that from Trump before. But never to the level of seriousness that he would be bringing it up to Congress in a speech like this. So we put out a note on Friday that, look, even with Trump saying that, the problem is, as Nathan alluded to earlier, to get this legislation through, you need to get 60 votes in the U.S. Senate. And we had a vote on this legislation as recently as 2 to 3 years ago, when there were only 33 senators voting against it. So if you have to get that number up to 60, that's a heavy lift, especially given the bipartisan support for this, the popularity of people coming into the U.S. to build these factories. It's a hard thing for lawmakers to say no to. So even if there were 17 Republicans in the Senate who voted for the CHIPS Act then, even if they all change their mind and go along with President Trump, you're still only in the 50 range, and as I said, we got to get to 60, and so there was only one Democrat who voted against the CHIPS Act. Bernie Sanders was opposed to it. You got to get that number significantly up for a Biden era big victory. When they wouldn't vote for it then, I think it would be a really heavy lift to get to 60 to actually, change this law and to make this horrible, horrible law go away. It does signal risk, though, that the administration, in administering this funds, could try to pull back on it. I don't think the administration has the general power to just say, look, Congress allocated this funding, we're just not going to spend it. And there would be contractual claims that the companies have as well, but there could be some sort of issues down the road as the administration slow rolls that funding. You can envision, possible future legal fights about it as this develops. But as far as across the board repeal and that $39 billion going away, I'm pretty skeptical that that's going anywhere.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate it. So just a couple of other things to keep in mind. On Friday, the White House had its crypto summit. This was on the advance of the executive order that we saw from President Trump last week, establishing a crypto stockpile. Crypto U.S. Let me get it right. A strategic Bitcoin reserve and a U.S. digital asset stockpile. The Bitcoin reserve holds all the Bitcoin that the US government has actually accumulated over the years due to enforcement actions and from bad actors. It's approximately around 208,000 Bitcoin. I think that's around 19 billion off the top of my head. And then the US digital asset stockpile are things like Ethereum and ADA and Solana and so forth, again, acquired via bad actors and enforcement actions. Now, David Sachs, who is the White House crypto and AR czar, said at the time that this would not include purchasing of new assets, that this would just be a reserve that we keep already existing assets. And if you follow the crypto space, you obviously know the cryptocurrency world did not like that. They wanted the United States government to go out there and purchase this. Now, the Bitcoin summit came. We didn't think much would come out of it. I don't think much did, but it's important to note is that this week is an important week for the stablecoin piece. The House Financial Services Committee is going to have a hearing tomorrow on stablecoins. Senate Banking Committee actually may have a markup on its stablecoin legislation. Now, what we're telling our clients is that if you're in stablecoins, you probably will see passage of this stablecoin bill sometime between April, probably May to July. However, stablecoin has the issue of being sucked into this bigger argument of cryptocurrency. And if you see a cryptocurrency market structure bill debate occurring without the stablecoin language getting the momentum, stablecoins could get drawn into that, and then it could be delayed until after the August recess. But right now, I still think the stablecoin bill has a decent shot. We're actually seeing 70% chance in the next 12 months. But I think in this May to July timeframe, you could see stablecoins move forward. And then the final thing I want to talk about is this idea, just to keep this on the radar, is this idea of a rescissions package. This floated up last week in discussions with Senator Lindsey Graham and Elon Musk. Rescissions packages aren't something that you generally hear about in Washington all that much. The last time it occurred was in 2018. But essentially what would happen here is President Trump would then say, look, here's all these unspent monies. I want Congress to go back and rescind the approval for these monies. And this happened, Congress always has the right to go back and claw back monies that hasn't spent. This is what happened during the COVID stimulus years. But back in 2018, President Trump in his first administration put forth a rescissions idea and said to Congress, I want to go back and claw back all these monies, and then Congress has to pass this without a filibuster. So it takes a majority vote in the House, a majority vote in the Senate, and in 2018 it actually failed because there wasn't enough Senate support. Now, there's no ideas in terms of specifics, but if you're trying to codify a lot of what DOGE is doing, you can do it via rescissions package. So I just wanted to put it on the radar. We don't have a view on it. We're going to be looking into it when we get a little bit more in terms of specifics, but I wanted to put it on your radar that it is something that generally folks here in Washington is talking about. And again, it doesn't require a filibuster-proof vote. So with that. With that being said, again, I want to say thank you. We're going to try and keep these calls, I swear, to around 10 to 15 minutes. But again, if you need a copy of that deep dive report on tariffs, please just let me know. But again, thank you much for attending. We really appreciate it, and talk soon.